So I've been thinking a lot about this idea, this premise of embodied virtue, and I've talked about it before on the calls, where simply the idea of spirituality and the idea of being in a flow state or being connected to spirit or whatever you want to call it, like is an important linguistic command, and yet it's limited in that the maps and models that we use to describe something like samadhi or nirvana or perfect awakening often themselves are traps that keep us from experiencing an unfiltered kind of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And so the practice, when it's truly working, there should be a sense of transcending successively into higher states of awareness, and then using your own sort of focus and willpower to drive that energy and that conscious awareness back into form and back out through your relationships to your family and to a loved one, to money, to work, to your profession, whatever it is. And it's perfectly true that meditation does give you enhanced boons in the workplace. It does make you sharper and more focused, less frazzled. It does give you a more sense of calm. It helps you sleep, lowers blood pressure, like slows down brain waves into more coherent fashion, regulates heart rate variability so that you have more range of calmness and excitation through the day instead of just being stuck on overdrive or kind of like in reverse into like a kind of depressed mud, right? And so the meditation, if you practice regularly and correctly, it's giving you a huge enhancement on well-being generally in your life. And that's not to be neglected. And that's a perfectly fine reason to get into it and start practicing. However, there are deeper imperatives that come online as you develop spiritually through the practice of meditation. And mainly that is to create a kind of bridge between heaven and earth, or between spirit and life and earth. And classically in Chinese Taoism, there's this sense of using Qigong or practice, which is an inner energy martial art, to connect the realm of heaven and earth through this vehicle of human. And that might sound sort of antiquated and outdated for our modern world. But if you take it as a kind of analogy or a proper mythos for us to orient around, then it creates a really elegant model, sort of visual model in a way. Just like the maps and concepts that I was talking about earlier, you have a visual model of your experience bridging awareness and spirit and the physical body and creating harmony in your own body and then in your life. And so Qigong, for example, is about harmonizing heaven and earth within your own system, and then using cultivated Jing or Qi or Shen. Those are three different names for the same thing as it becomes more rarefied as you practice. And deeply driving that back into your own heart and organs and mind so that you're cultivating a state of wisdom and even immortality. And I don't know if those ancient texts literally meant, endless non-aging of the body. Certainly there are therapeutic applications of meditation and mindfulness. where your brain is certainly happier and healthier, and areas like the amygdala and the hippocampus, which are glands responsible for memory and learning. Hippocampus gets bigger through meditation, sometimes in as little as 8 weeks. Amygdala, which is responsible for triggering the alert patterns in the nervous system and tripping you into a fight or flight state, shrinks. The gray matter in the amygdala shrinks after as little as 8 weeks. This is a study from Purdue University, I believe. Of course, it has these kind of beneficial effects on the brain, body, and nervous system. And then the idea is that you can consciously cultivate this qi or shen in your body for deep, if not immortality, then greater well-being.
Like, I don't know many 5,000-year-old Chinese guys. I don't know about you, but
no, I don't. Yeah, so for now, we can rule out the premise that what they were talking about was a kind of indefinite living of the body. But certainly, chi masters like Montauk Chia, whose work I would highly suggest, are getting pretty long in the tooth and old, and yet they retain a kind of vitality and loving energy that's chi based. It's not just that they're healthy and eating organic beef and, you know, grass-fed cows or whatever. It's that they've cultivated their vital energy in a way that has sustained their physical being in a way that's like clearly making them look really good into old age.
Cool.
So TM as well. There are levels of consciousness in TM that practitioners, including the Maharishi, who was a huge proponent of TM, which came from an older tradition, talked about in order to let the aspirant access levels of reality that are much higher and more refined than our waking or dreaming or deep sleep realities. So we have these three great states. We have waking, sleeping, dreaming, according to the traditions. And there's a fourth, which is called Turiya. And what that is complete merging with the spirit that is everything in a completely coherent fashion. So being cognizantly aware that you are completely at one with all manifest creation. And so as well as going through these, you know, you sleep, you forget, you dream a little, you wake up, you go through your day, you have a cup of coffee, life is good, you sleep again, you're dreaming, you forget. There are also these options that TM takes, and they don't just refer to Turiya, but they refer to these much higher levels of super consciousness, where not only are you at one with manifest creation, but also the frequency of your being or your soul or your nervous system and mind is so high that it creates a kind of state of bliss that can then be made permanent. And so again, just like with Qigong and Taoism, this tradition of TM, which comes from Vedanta, which is a very, very old tradition, has this process by which, through refining your own vehicle and developing your own system and harmonizing the forces that have come together to create you, you elevate yourself in a way that no drug or drink or sex or really anything can do for you. And there are lineages that then take that, and this would be the tantric path of elevating yourself into a state of enlightenment through these state practices, and then driving it back into all of the things in your life that require the attention of a modern man, like family and money and job and sexuality. So the tantric path isn't just about sex like a lot of people think it is. But it's more that as you're walking through life, there's a recognition that you're already free. And so you drive the enlightened energy that you already are into the density of form in a way that creates a rumbling of energy, in a way that creates a disharmony of the ignorance and density of form and life and suffering and even evil, is being hit with the lightness of a virtue that escapes conceptual labels and frameworks. And there's a saying in Chinese Taoism from the Tao Te Ching: in the void is virtue and no evil. And so when I refer to void in Chinese Taoism, it's the same as nirvana in Buddhism. It's the emptiness of all manifest form and pure radiant spirit that exists as a kind of oneness field. And so, again, through this cultivation of the inner martial arts with Qigong and Taoism, or through the lineage of TM, of raising the vibration of your consciousness, or through the practice of yoga, or any other, even prayer, contemplative prayer in Christianity. There's a sense of letting down the walls of your individual self into the greater spirit that exists as a oneness field, and then tapping into the purity, the virtue of the void, or shunyata, or nirvana, or God, or like whatever you want to call it. And then becoming a vehicle for that, so that every moment is walked in recognition of your own inherent divinity. And not in an inflated way of like, oh, I'm God, I'm, everything, and therefore I can do whatever I want in life. Like there's a lot of arrogance in that, which is something you have to be aware of as a pitfall for for the spiritual path. But in a way that you become royalty and a sovereign of your own interior kingdom, and then you're able to manifest outwardly the harmony of developing your heart in the vision of a more perfect realm. And it's not exactly that you're imagining a more perfect realm, it's that you're practicing and raising yourself into it, right? So this is the part where I say, don't take my word for it, just practice and notice what's there. And notice as you rifle through states, even if you fall asleep on the cushion or the hot tub, if you're practicing in the hot tub, which is fine, you're noticing that your mind fluctuates and goes, if you're really in touch with your emotions, you might have a bunch of emotional neuroticisms. You might be rifling through grief. There might be heaviness and depression sometimes. Maybe you feel unreasonable joy. Maybe you're in doubt. Maybe you're having sexual fantasies. It's like your mind is constantly going, even if it's not specifically like the thinking mind, like I'm Kevin, I'm sitting here and I'm having thoughts. It's like there are states and moods and emotions that are constantly kind of flowing through. So you're becoming a witness of that, and then notice when you have these small gaps in your experience where there's something shining through that is not completely of yourself, but that rings or resonates as something higher or greater than yourself. And I would venture to say that the permanent acquisition of being able to access those kind of states and turn it into a permanent experience is the realm of all the greatest artists and geniuses and saints and great politicians or even warriors. And so the real promise of this practice is that through calming your mind and taming your thoughts and emotions and opening your heart into what is just pure consciousness, you're connecting to something that essentially makes you superhuman. Like, beyond being human, there's a field of awareness. And that thing allows you to be so much more than what the limited identity thinks it is. And that can be really powerful, and it can also be really devastating to the sense of self that thinks it's a definite thing. And so this path is not without warning as well, where sometimes the dissolution of the self, although it may be leading to you identifying as a spirit that's much greater, means a lot of letting go and a lot of perhaps humbling experiences. Not necessarily. And there are still ways to use meditation as a kind of like a really good over-the-counter cure-all for whatever ails you, you know? Like, it's not that you can't use it in this fashion, that it's a panacea for a lot of inner turbulence. And, you know, again, like better sleep and better health and lower cortisol and lower blood pressure, if that's beneficial to you, the modulation of the immune system. It's like there's a lot of positives. And yet to take seriously the potential of what you truly are at your deepest core and deepest heart, that this world really needs, is a very serious job to take on. And so it's not something that you have to take with a kind of religious fervor or to be over serious about it yourself, because oftentimes meditation leads to a lot of buoyancy and lightness and ease. It's just that once you start practicing into your depth, there's almost a command there that you cannot live a shallow life anymore. And you must engage as deeply as possible with the forces of your life and not run from your own pain, not run from the suffering in other people, and not run from the truest identity of yourself, which is radiant spirit pervading you all the while, like a sun shining right from your heart, a sense of luminousness. Because if you do, and recognize that this is available, your deepest hidden potential will haunt you for the rest of your life. And so stepping onto the spiritual path is almost a command to always come back to the essential seed of what you are and burn with the fire of your deepest essence. And that's what practice is about. So I think I've said enough for now. So we'll launch in with some practice instruction, unless you have any questions right now, but it might be more elegant if we just dive in.